Most people don't realize they're being manipulated, not because they're stupid, because the feeling was doing work that logic never approved. It arrives as flattery, as urgency, as guilt, as love, as the sense that you owe someone something you never agreed to give. It arrives dressed as care, as concern, as a friendly warning, and by the time you notice, you've already moved. Here's what no one tells you: becoming impossible. To manipulate is not about becoming heartless. It's about becoming clear. Cold doesn't mean cruel. Strategic doesn't mean dishonest. It means your decisions run on logic and values, not on other people's emotional pressure. It means you stop being an instrument that other people know how to play. Machiavelli spent his entire life in rooms full of people trying to use him, deceive him, or remove him: cardinals, princes, mercenaries, diplomats, men with every possible motive. He survived all of it, not by becoming ruthless, by becoming unreadable, unmovable, impossible to lever. He studied manipulation the way a doctor studies disease, not to practice it, but to become immune to it. 6 principles. Each one dismantles a specific manipulation vector. By the end, you'll understand exactly how manipulation enters and how to close every door it uses. Let's get into it. PR in simple 1. Separate what you feel from what you decide. Someone makes you feel guilty or grateful or afraid of losing something. And while you're inside that feeling, you make a decision. Later, when the feeling has passed, you look at what you agreed to and wonder, why did I say yes to that? The answer: you didn't decide, you felt, and the feeling was placed there deliberately, or at minimum, it was exploited the moment it appeared. It doesn't need to be conscious on the other person's part. Some people do it instinctively, without strategy, simply because they've learned over years that producing a certain emotional state in you produces a certain behavior from you. But whether it's calculated or instinctive, the mechanism is identical. They create an emotional state in you. Your decision comes out of that state, and the decision serves them. Think about the last time you agreed to something you later regretted. Trace it back. There was almost certainly a feeling present at the moment of agreement that wasn't present when you looked back on it. Obligation, fear, warmth, excitement, shame. The decision felt obvious in the moment and puzzling in retrospect because the feeling that made it obvious had disappeared, and without it, the logic didn't hold. That gap between how a decision feels in the moment and how it looks afterward is where manipulation lives. Before any significant decision, introduce a delay between the feeling and the choice. Not a dramatic one. An hour. A night. Long enough for the emotional spike to normalize. Then ask one question. If I felt neutral right now, completely calm, no pressure, would I still make this choice? If yes, proceed. If no, or if you're not sure, you found the manipulation. The feeling was doing work that logic didn't support. You don't have to explain this to anyone. You don't have to make it a confrontation. You simply stop letting heightened emotional states sign your name to things. Urgency, guilt, and flattery all work by compressing your decision window. I need an answer now. After everything I've done for you, you're the only one who can help. Each of these is designed to make you act before you've had the chance to think. They accelerate you past the moment where clarity would have intervened. The delay breaks the mechanism. And when it does, you can evaluate the actual proposition, stripped of its emotional packaging, on its own merits. Real urgency has evidence. Manufactured urgency has pressure. Ask yourself, what actually happens if I take an hour? If the answer is nothing material, the urgency was a tool, not a fact. And that tells you everything you need to know about who you're dealing with. The person who controls the timeline controls the outcome. When you reclaim even a small piece of that timeline, you reclaim the decision. PRN simple 2. Have no predictable needs. This one is going to feel uncomfortable. Every need you have that someone else knows about is a lever. Your need for approval, your need to be liked, your need to avoid conflict, your need for this specific person's validation, this job, this relationship, this opportunity, your fear of being alone, your fear of being seen as difficult, your fear of financial instability. The moment someone understands what you cannot afford to lose, they understand exactly how to move you. They don't need to threaten it openly. They just need to imply, subtly, that it might be at risk and watch you correct your behavior to protect it. Not all of them will use it deliberately, but all of them have access to it. And the more visible and consistent your needs are, the more reliably you perform the same anxieties in the same situations, the easier you are to operate. This doesn't mean eliminate your needs. That's not possible, and it's not the point. It means stop advertising them, stop performing them publicly, and start building alternatives so that no single need becomes your entire exposure. Every time you find yourself dependent on a single source, one job, one person, one relationship, one source of approval, you have created a vulnerability. The fix is not to need less, it's to have options. A second income stream so no single employer holds your compliance. A wider social circle so no single person holds your sense of self-worth. Skills that transfer across environments so no single situation holds your identity hostage. Options are not just practical, they are psychological armor. When you have genuine alternatives, your entire posture changes. You stop performing. You stop over-investing in any single outcome. You stop shrinking yourself to preserve access to something you're afraid to lose. And that change in posture is visible to everyone around you. And it changes how they engage with you. People are instinctively drawn to those who don't need them. Not because neediness is unattractive in some superficial sense, but because a person with real alternatives is harder to manipulate, and harder to manipulate reads, on some level, as harder to control, which reads as genuine power. Manipulation operates most effectively when the target has no exit. When the cost of saying no feels catastrophic, people say yes even to things they know they shouldn't. The moment you develop a real alternative, even an imperfect one, the calculus changes entirely. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Most people read this as cruelty. It isn't. It's a statement about dependence. The ruler who governs by being loved needs the love to continue. The moment affection is withheld, he is exposed, movable, desperate to restore what he needs. The ruler who has built genuine alternatives, who does not require any single person's love to function, cannot be moved by its removal. Options are what give you that position. Not hardness, not coldness, just the genuine demonstrated ability to walk away. You can't manufacture options overnight, but you can start building them today. The point is direction, so that a year from now, the lever someone thinks they hold on you is lighter than it used to be. Strategic patience is itself a form of power. Disciple 3. Read intent. Not just behavior. Someone is being very nice to you. Generous, attentive, always available. Making you feel special, seen, uniquely understood. Going out of their way in ways that feel almost too good to be coincidence. And because you're a reasonable person, you respond in kind. You open up. You become warmer. You start to trust. The relationship deepens and it feels earned, mutual, real. Then at some point they ask for something, or the niceness becomes conditional in a way you didn't anticipate. Or you find yourself in a position, professional, personal, financial, that you didn't consciously agree to, but somehow ended up in because of the relationship. And you realize too late that you were being warmed up, The investment was calculated, and the return is being collected now. This is not cynicism. It is a pattern that runs constantly in human social dynamics, mostly below the level of conscious awareness, and it has been running since long before Machiavelli named it. When someone's behavior toward you is notably positive, ask a simple question. Privately, what does this person want? Not what do they say they want. Not what seems obvious on the surface. What do they actually want from you? From your relationship with them, from the position they're building. Most people never ask this question about people who are being kind to them. They reserve skepticism for people they already distrust. But the most sophisticated influencing is almost always done by people whose behavior appears most generous, most warm, most selfless. The person who seems to want nothing is often the one with the longest game. You're not looking for proof of bad intent. You're not becoming paranoid or closed off to genuine connection. You're keeping the question open, running a quiet background process that tracks. Is this person building something real or building a position? The difference reveals itself over time. Genuine connection stays warm and consistent even when the other person can't get what they want from you. Strategic warmth cools. It becomes less available. The generosity develops conditions. The attentiveness shifts toward others who are more useful. Watch for that pattern and be patient enough to see it before you've made commitments that are difficult to reverse. The key insight here is that you can accept kindness fully, enjoy it, genuinely, engage with warmth, while still keeping the question alive. These are not mutually exclusive. Awareness is not the same as suspicion. It simply means you're not letting the feeling of being valued short-circuit the part of your mind that is watching for consistency. Principle 4. Control. What information you give you tells someone something about yourself. A fear, a frustration, an ambition that matters to you. A relationship under strain, a thing you feel insecure about and rarely say out loud. You shared it because it felt natural, because the conversation had an intimacy to it, because opening up in that moment felt like the right thing, like trust, like connection, like being human. Later, that information surfaces not in the way you shared it, but repurposed, pressure applied to exactly the right point, a comment that lands just a little too precisely, a reminder of what you stand to lose, delivered at the exact moment you're deciding something, a reframing of your own vulnerability, handed back to you as a reason to comply. The information you gave in trust became material in someone else's hands, and you didn't see it being picked up because it was taken gently, in a moment when you felt safe. You didn't make a mistake by sharing. You made a mistake about who you were sharing with and when. Information should be released in proportion to demonstrated trust, not in proportion to how good the conversation feels in the moment. This distinction matters enormously. A conversation can feel deeply intimate before any real trust has been established. Emotional resonance is not the same as safety. Chemistry is not the same as character. The practical rule, share what is appropriate for the depth of the relationship as proven by time and behavior, not as projected by charm, intensity, or how seen they make you feel. This means holding some things close for longer than feels natural. It means being genuinely warm and present in conversations without providing a full map of your interior. You can be open without being transparent. You can be connected without being fully readable. And when you notice someone probing, asking unusually specific questions about your fears, your finances, your relationships, your pressure points, slow down. Not every pointed question is a red flag, but systematic patient cataloging of your vulnerabilities is a pattern. Learn to recognize it before it's finished. Manipulators often accelerate intimacy artificially, creating the feeling of deep, rare connection very quickly because a person who feels genuinely understood will share more, faster and more honestly than they would with someone they'd known longer, but connected with less intensely. The speed of the intimacy is the mechanism. The feeling of being uniquely seen is the product being sold. The strategic mind doesn't refuse connection, it paces it. It waits for behavioral proof across multiple situations before releasing information that could function as a lever, and it understands that genuine vulnerability, the kind that actually deepens a relationship, is most valuable and most safe when it's offered to someone who has already demonstrated they won't use it. Principle 5. Never justify to someone who isn't out an explanation. You make a decision about your time, your priorities, your money. A relationship you're stepping back from, a direction you're choosing to go. Someone in your life doesn't like it. They don't issue a formal challenge. They simply express disapproval, a comment, a look, a pointed silence, a question with an edge in it, and suddenly, without quite deciding to, you're explaining yourself, laying out your reasoning, walking them through the logic of your choice, as if you need their sign-off before the decision is real. They didn't ask for a formal justification. They applied social pressure. But the pressure felt like a question, and you answered it fully, anxiously, with significantly more detail than the situation called for. Here is what just happened. You gave someone authority over your decisions that you never explicitly granted them. The length of your explanation, the anxiety in it, the way you kept adding more reasoning, as if the previous point hadn't landed, all of it confirmed that their approval is something you need, which tells them, clearly, that disapproval is a tool that works on you, and they will use it again. Stop over-explaining to people who haven't earned that level of access to your reasoning. You are allowed to make decisions and simply own them. You are allowed to say, I've thought about it, and this is the direction I'm going, and then stop. You are allowed to hear someone's displeasure, register it, and proceed without issuing a defense. The over-explanation is not kindness or transparent. It is an attempt to manage their emotional state, to neutralize their disapproval, so you can stop feeling its pressure. And the moment you make it your job to manage other people's emotional responses to your decisions, you have made yourself permanently available for re-persuasion. Every time they push, you produce more reasoning. Every time you produce more reasoning, you signal that pushing works. One sentence, calm, unhurried. This is the direction I'm going. Then stop talking. Let the silence stand. That silence is not rudeness. It is not aggression. It is the sound of a person who does not require permission to live their own life. The deeper principle here is matching the depth of your justification to the actual authority of the person asking. Your accountant is owed an explanation of your financial decisions. Your doctor is owed an explanation of your symptoms. A colleague who disapproves of how you spend your personal time is owed exactly nothing, and providing an elaborate accounting trains them to expect one. You listen. You consider. If they raise something genuinely useful, you incorporate it. Then you decide, and you move. That is not arrogance. That is what internal authority actually looks like. Principle 6. Recognize manufactured consensus. This one is subtle, and it is everywhere. Everyone thinks you're being difficult. People are starting to talk. Nobody operates that way. You're coming across badly. I'm telling you this as a friend. Notice what's happening in each of those sentences. There is no verifiable claim. You don't know who everyone is. You don't know what people are supposedly saying, or when, or to whom. The statement contains no evidence, only the implication of a social verdict that you are powerless to examine. But the implication lands anyway, because something deep in the human brain doesn't wait for evidence B. E4 treating social threat as real. The signal of group disapproval, even an unverified, unnamed, possibly invented group disapproval, activates the same system as an actual threat. And once that system is active, the pressure to self-correct is immediate and intense, to soften, to accommodate, to adjust your behavior back into alignment with a consensus that may have been fabricated 30 seconds ago for the specific purpose of moving you. This is one of the most elegant manipulation tools in existence. For a simple reason, it costs nothing to deploy. It's almost impossible to disprove in the moment, and arguing against it only makes you look worse. You cannot defend yourself against an unnamed everyone without appearing defensive. The trap is built into the structure of the claim. The defense is not argument. It is stillness. When someone invokes consensus to pressure you, pause. Ask yourself one question internally. Do I have any independent evidence that this is true? Not evidence they've provided. Your own evidence from your own direct observation. If the answer is no, treat the claim as unverified. Respond without conceding. That's interesting feedback is a complete sentence. It acknowledges that you've heard them. It gives them nothing to push against. It does not accept the frame that an unnamed everyone has authority over your behavior. Machiavelli saw this mechanism destroy men far more powerful than their enemies. When Cesare Borgia's rivals couldn't defeat him directly, they worked to manufacture the perception that his own allies were turning against him, seeding doubt, circulating rumors, constructing a consensus of disloyalty that didn't yet exist. Several of Cesare's lieutenants, unable to sit with the uncertainty of an unverified social threat, made preemptive moves to protect themselves. Those moves created the very betrayal the rumor had. Only implied. The manufactured consensus became real because the targets couldn't tolerate sitting still while an unnamed everyone seemed to be moving against them. Machiavelli recorded this not as a story about betrayal, but as a lesson in how perception, carefully weaponized, does work that armies cannot. The prince who governs by managing every person's impression of him has handed the levers of his own behavior to anyone willing to fabricate an impression. The person who has genuinely learned to hold unverified social claims lightly, neither dismissing them nor being moved by them without evidence, has closed a door that most people leave permanently open. The question is never, what do people think of me? The question is, which people, and how do I actually know what this actually feels like from the inside? It doesn't feel like armor. It doesn't feel like aggression or coldness or the performance of not caring. It feels like clarity. It feels like being in a room where someone is working to move you through guilt, through flattery, through urgency, through a consensus you can't verify, and noticing what's happening, watching the mechanism operate, seeing the hand behind the feeling, not reacting, noticing, and then making your decision from your own ground instead of theirs. That is what these 6 principles build. The delay that creates space between feeling and deciding. The alternatives that dissolve the leverage of dependence. The background question about intent that stays quietly open. The pacing of disclosure that keeps your vulnerabilities yours. The silence after a decision that doesn't require permission. The stillness in the face of a consensus that no one can actually name. None of these are the tools of a cold person. They are the tools of a person who has decided, clearly, finally, without apology, that their inner life belongs to them, that their decisions are theirs to make, that their direction is not subject to whoever applies the most pressure. Machiavelli didn't write about power to help people dominate others. He wrote about it because he understood that the world contains people who will take from you your time, your energy, your choices, your direction if you don't understand how taking works. The people who move through the world without being moved aren't harder than everyone else. They aren't colder or more cynical or less capable of love and connection. They've simply stopped outsourcing their decisions to other people's emotions. They're done asking for permission. And once you see how manipulation works, really see it. At the level of mechanism, you can't unsee it. The flattery lands differently. The urgency reads differently. The unnamed everyone is just a sentence now, not a verdict. That's the point. Not to become unreachable, to become unmanipulable. There's a difference and it's worth everything.